Hello guys, Danny here from Dan's Tech, and today's video guys I'm going to be bringing you a review of a GTX 1060. The one we're going to be looking at is the dual fan version from Palit. Now I've got it actually already installed on my test rig, so just move the box out of the way. As you can see, it does feature two fans and it has got a pretty good cooling solution on there, which does have a few copper heat pipes just to, really maximise the cooling potential. So without further ado, we're going to jump into the review. We're going to have a look at the product after we've seen what we get in the box, and I'm going to be going over some benchmarks at 1080p and also 4K in games like GTA 5, Battlefield 4 and Killing Floor 2, and even going to go over the valid benchmarks, things like that. So without further ado, let's jump into it. To get started, that's a very quick overview of what you get in the box. On top you find a manual followed by a disc with an outdated driver. Under the foam you'll find the card in an anti-static bag. No power conversion cables are present, however the card does only require a single 6-pin power connector. Onto the card's dimensions are 25.2 by 11.2 centimeters. As for the thickness, this card is dual slot. As for the cooler strapped to the card, it features dual 90mm fans which blow through the aluminium heatsink inside. Taking a close look, you can see that the card does feature 3 copper heat pipes that contact the GPU for efficient heat dissipation. The shroud is made of black plastic and, being quite honest, is quite flimsy. However, the cooling solution does feature 2 fans and many heat pipes, so it should do a good job overall at cooling. I'll be sure to get back to this near the end. As for the power requirement of the card, there's a single 6-pin power connector on top. Palit do recommend a minimum of a 400-watt power supply, making this card very efficient. With this card being a GTX 1060, unfortunately Nvidia did decide that their lower end cards are not to support SLI. Personally, I think this is a dumb move as the AMD RX 480 does support Crossfire. However, people have said it so that Nvidia don't undercut themselves with their higher end GTX 1080. As for some further specs, the card features 1280 cores, clocked at 1506 MHz with a boost of 1708 MHz. The card also features 6GB of GDDR5 memory sat on a 192-bit memory bus. As for the outputs, this card features a single DVI port, a single HDMI port, in addition to 3 DisplayPort outputs. Anyway, I think it's about time we get installing the card and get playing some games to see how it performs. Just like before when I took a look at the GTX 1070 from Galax/KFA2, I'm going to be doing some live benchmarking with the card, showing you guys the actual FPS you get in games. This is going to be on my standard test rig with an i7-4790K clocked at 4.2 GHz and 16 gigs of memory. First up, jumping into Battlefield 4 with the high preset set. This card looks to be doing very well, drawing 140 FPS average. Very respectable for this card, and yeah, very good for the price that this card does come in at. I was relatively impressed. Switching the graphics settings to Ultra, of course we see a decrease in frames, however still a very good number at 102 FPS average. Again, passing my expectations for sure. As for 4K at high settings, the card does relatively well, pushing 53 FPS on average. Very surprising that this figure was above 50 FPS. Moving on to a slightly more demanding game, GTA 5. Running the game at high settings first with 2x MSAA, the card seems to be doing very well at 101 FPS, as you can see in the gameplay. Backing out of the game and launching it up again with all the settings now maxed out, but with MSAA 2x4 instead of x8, the card was able to push 66 frames per second. Moving on to my last test at 4K with high settings set and 2x MSAA, the card does surprisingly well, being able to push 40 FPS on average. Just like Battlefield 4, this is a very good frame rate and is more than acceptable if you wish to play at 4K resolution. Next up we have Need for Speed 2016, which is a very well optimised game in my opinion, favouring Nvidia cards. First up we have all settings set to high at 1080p with FXAA turned on. The 1060 can output 102 FPS on average. Very impressive. Now keeping at 1080p and raising the settings to maximum with TAA anti-aliasing set, we see a decrease in frames to 78 FPS. Still a very healthy number. Now as for 4K results, running the game at medium with HBAO and FXAA, the card was able to output 31 FPS. A little on the low side, but definitely playable if you want to play at 4K. On to Killing Floor 2 with the Ultra preset set at 1080p, the 1060 flies over itself, averaging 122 FPS. Very impressive, although Killing Floor 2 isn't exactly an extremely demanding title, despite it looking extremely good. Now as for changing the resolution to 4K and keeping all the settings at Ultra, the card is able to deliver a very similar result for Need for Speed 2016 and pushes out 35 FPS on average. Pretty impressive, as you can't play most games at maximum with the 1060. However, this game does run pretty well at max, and if you want to bring down some of the settings, you will obviously get more frames than 35 FPS. Lastly, onto an actual benchmark. In Valley at 1080p with the Extreme HD preset, the card was able to deliver 66 FPS on average after testing the card 4 times. As for temperatures, the card hit a maximum of 72 degrees throughout all of the testing while staying somewhat quiet at a fan speed of 54%. Not the lowest fan speed in the world, but the card did keep relatively cool. As for power draw, the card together with all the components in the system, including an i7-4790K, 16GB of memory and many mechanical hard drives, the system pulled a maximum of 252 watts. I also did some sound tests for this card, so take a listen. I can also compare this to the reference GTX 1070 I reviewed recently. So guys, that's my review of the Palit GTX 1060. Overall, pretty damn good. Now, this card isn't as powerful as the 1070, you know, we kind of guessed that since it cost a lot less money, but it is really close to the performance of the 1070, and in terms of price to performance, this card is better in terms of price performance, so you're getting a lot more performance in terms of your money. Fair enough, the performance overall isn't as much, but I just wanted to mention that. It is a brilliant card, and this version from Palit, one thing I do want to mention actually is that you see what the fans are doing now? When they're kind of trying to stop, but just keep going, it's like it's really like if they're going like 100 or 200 RPM, one of them might slow down and stop or whatever. They're quite crazy. That's what this, that's what the fans do on this card. So just want you to be aware of that. They will stop in a minute or two, but yeah, it's quite strange to see that on my 980. They just stopped as soon as you finish gaming. But yeah, apart from that, in terms of the cooling solution on the card, the cooling solution is not bad. Now, in terms of the noise the card makes, I'm going to say it's average. It isn't exactly one of the quietest cards I've listened to, nor is it one of the loudest cards. So in terms of the cooling solution, it's average. So in terms of me recommending this particular model, you know, if you like the look of it, feel free to grab it. But from my personal experience, in terms of noise levels, it's not bad. I have done a little bit of overclocking, and I can squeeze about 50 to 100 megahertz onto the core clock, so that's not bad. So yeah, that's kind of going to conclude my review. I have also included temps and also power draw at the end, so you guys can really make a decision if you want to grab this specific model from Palit. Anyway guys, thank you very much for watching. You'll find links to good old Amazon and also Palit's website to find out some further pictures on the product. So yeah, that's about it guys. Thank you very much for watching, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.